Hi, this is Sarit Switzer, and welcome to the It Is Taught podcast, a podcast devoted to the teachings of Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi as recorded in his most famous work, the Tanya. My hope for this show is to make these teachings accessible and relatable to the average person, regardless of prior Jewish education or affiliation. The episodes follow the prescribed daily study portions and are meant to serve as practical lessons in how to live your life as your true self and develop an authentic and powerful relationship with your Creator. I have personally experienced the effects the study of this work has had on me, and I'm excited to share what I can of this knowledge with you. So please join me on this journey of learning, self-growth, and connection with your source. Hi, and welcome to the It Is Taught podcast. This is episode 558 for the 14th of Sivan in a regular year. So yesterday we brought up this very mind-blowing concept of tzimtzum, this idea that God is not just unlimited. It's not, when we say that God is unlimited, that's a misnomer because God is way more than just unlimited. God is actually limited as well. God, in his limitlessness, he has the ability to constrict his limitlessness. He has the ability to, so to speak, create a rock that is too big for him to move. So within God, there are actually these two polar opposite kind of attributes in terms of our understanding of him. On the one hand, we relate to God in terms of his expansiveness, in terms of his ability to create something from nothing and thus bring our world into existence and vivify it at all times and in every moment. And then on the other hand, we say that there's this other aspect of God, which is his ability to constrict himself, to contain himself and limit himself. And that gives the ability of the world and of all of his creations to have a sense of independent existence and not be nullified in their source. And we talked about how these two aspects of God are equally unknowable to us. They're equally beyond our comprehension. So we can talk about them, we can discuss them to a certain extent, but we can also become aware that they are truly beyond human grasp. There's something which we can't really hold on to in a true sense. So that being said, it's good to know that these things exist so we can talk about them a little bit more. And today we are going to talk about them a little bit more. And we're going to understand how these two attributes are referred to in Hasidic and Kabbalistic literature. So in brief, and it's a pretty short section today, so it's just kind of like going to be giving us some a visual for these ideas, is that when we talk about God's ability to expand, then that ability to expand we can refer to as light, God's light. This is the vitality that he brings into the world is what we can think of as light. And when we think about God's ability to constrict, we can say that God's ability to constrict is God's vessels. These are vessels which contain the light. We'll also learn today about another way to understand these vessels is actually the letters. The Hebrew letters, the 22 Hebrew letters through which we know the world was created with. So when we talk about God's creation, the actual, how God spoke the world into creation, we know that God spoke using the letters, but the letters themselves are the vessels through which God's speech came about. And we'll learn about how the source of these Hebrew letters actually come from 5 specific letters, which in Kabbalah are alluded to as the 5 gvuros, the 5 mites, like the 5 constrictions, kind of the 5 constraints, which divide up our speech, or God's speech too, any kind of speech, into 5 distinctive ways that we speak. So we'll discuss this a little bit more when we get into the text, but for now I'm just giving you a brief overview. And then we'll also learn that the source of these 5 constrictions is in something called the candle of darkness, the botzina de kaldenuta in Kabbalistic literature, which is a supernal type of gvura, the ultimate supernal type of might or constriction. And so let's get into the text, and you'll see this is going to be kind of a review. I kind of just gave you like the whole thing really in a little nutshell there. And so we'll discuss it more as we go into it. So here we go. So, and again, this is chapter 4 of Sha'ar HaYichud V'Haemunah, and we're going to conclude the chapter today. So today's section is actually a bracketed thing. So it's sort of like a side note, so to speak, but it is very essential, I think. And it's a very interesting technical understanding of the things that we've been talking about. So the Alter Rebbe begins and he says that this aspect of the tzimtzum and the concealment of the vitality is called vessels, and the vitality itself is called light. So the constriction of vitality is called vessels, or in Hebrew kelim, and the vitality itself is called light, or in Hebrew or. And just like when we think of an actual physical vessel, what does the physical vessel do? It conceals that which is within it. So think about, like, let's say if you have like a bowl or a cup or something like that, if it's assuming that the bowl or cup is opaque, then you don't see what's inside of it, right? So too does the tzimtzum conceal and hide the light and the vitality, which comes down. And now, what are these vessels? When we say what are these kelim, what do we mean by this? So the Alter Rebbe explains that these vessels, just like I said in the introduction, are the letters, the 22 Hebrew letters. And the source of these 22 Hebrew letters are 5 specific letters. What are these 5 specific letters? Mem, Nun, Tzadik, Pei, and Chaf. What are these 5 letters? Seems kind of random. These 5 letters are the Hey Gvuros, the 5 severities, or the 5 like constraints. What do these 5 constraints do? They divide up and separate the 5 organs of verbal articulation, which namely they are, we mentioned these previously, are the larynx, the palate, the tongue, the teeth, and the lips. Which basically, so it's like every time we speak letters, and this is something even like when people learn like speech therapy, it's like they'll have the speech therapist will have the child like touch the therapist's mouth to see which organs are at play. Are we using our tongue? Are we using our teeth, our lips? Like, I mean, really often it's like a few of these things are at play, but there's certain organs of articulation that allow us to speak letters. And if you think about it, these organs of verbal articulation are really constraints. So the constraints that the lips have. So like when I say the letter like mem, and I'm closing my mouth together with my lips like that, the lips they're serving as a constraint to the otherwise kind of like formless form of my breath and of my voice, which otherwise would just be like a simple like ah, I'm taking that simple ah and I'm constraining it through the different organs of verbal articulation. And so the Tanya and the Alter Rebbe here, he breaks it down into 5, that there's 5 specific organs of verbal articulation, which are sourced in the 5 letters, these 5 letters of Mem, Nun, Tzadik, Pei, and Chaf. And so these 5 letters of verbal articulation, these break down, and these are the source and create the 22 Hebrew letters. And now, so now what's the source of the source? What's the source of these 5 gvuros, these 5 constraints, which another word to say it are the 5 letters of verbal articulation, 5 organs of verbal articulation. The source of these 5 are something in which I mentioned in the introduction, something in Kabbalah, which is called the Botzina de Kardenuta. This is the candle of darkness. What is this candle of darkness? This is the supernal Gevura of Atik Yomin, which Atik Yomin, it's not the time now to get into a huge discussion of what that is, but Atik Yomin it literally means the ancient of days, and this is the level which is above all the worlds. This is the level of God's keter, God's crown, like his will. And so too, now the Alter Rebbe ends off here, just like the source of the Gvuros, these 5 constraints is in the supernal Gvura of Atik Yomin, so too are the Chasadim, the source of all the Chasadim, the kindnesses which come from the right side, they come from the Chesed of Atik Yomin, as is known to those who study Kabbalah. So that's the end of the section today. So it's a little technical, and maybe that's why it's in brackets here, because it's sort of like, if we skipped it, it wouldn't be the end of the world. It's kind of like just giving us like a little bit of a map, like a technical kind of like interlude, but I think it's interesting, and I think it really helps to deepen our understanding, and I think it really does relate to a lot of what we'll be learning later on in terms of vessels and light and all of these kind of things. So I hope that was interesting to you as well, and tomorrow we will move on to chapter 5, and I'll speak to you then. Thanks for listening to the It Is Taught podcast, hosted by Sarit Switzer. This podcast is dedicated in loving memory of my maternal grandfather, Avraham Yitzchak ben Binyamin HaKohen of blessed memory. Music by Shoshana. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to support the show, please share it with others and subscribe on YouTube, Apple iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And make sure to leave us a 5-star review. To find out more about the It Is Taught project, including more information on my soon-to-be published book, please visit our website, itistaught.com. To catch the latest from me, follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Looking forward to speaking with you tomorrow, and until then, have a great day.